I am now being joined by Dr. Laskiewicz from London to discuss Trump's 500% tariffs. That's the one being proposed by Graham and Israel-Gaza crisis plus the Ukraine-Russian war. Good to have you this evening. Trump is, sort of maybe considering 500% tariffs on countries importing oil from Russia. What do you think about this, Dr. Marek?
Well, what's happening is that Donald Trump is indicating precisely what measures he will take if Russia refuses to accept the plans to bring about a treaty. And he is therefore indicating that he will do something. The problem for him is he now has a sobriquet, taco, Trump again chickens out. And it's unclear whether, therefore, other nations will, in fact, be so worried, including Russia, of course, as they might otherwise have been.
Do you see this as a way to bend Russia also, or more of a decision that would favor the American economy?
This is primarily geared for the Russian-Ukrainian war. There's no real benefits for the American economy. If anything, it is kind of negative because the sheer scale of the tariffs means there'll be virtually no trade at all. I honestly doubt that the 500% would go ahead. And even if it were to do so, it might get clawed back soon, simply because it's on the verge of bringing world trade in those areas to a standstill. But I repeat, as a taco Trump, I'm afraid his threats are no longer seen as threatening as they used to be.
How would this affect Russia, plus the EU? The EU is also talking strong. I know that you clocked in while we're talking about the EU's perspective with regards Trump increasing tariffs. But how does this, impact Russia if this, were to scale through to sort of cause a divergence from them, supplying oil to some of these countries that have been mentioned by Trump?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because it really hinges on how adroit his diplomacy is, and I'm afraid it's not very adroit at all. Right now, Iran is in any case being threatened by America. China is as well, because it's been warned about its build-up by Taiwan. And therefore, the net effect of this might be actually to increase support for Russia by its semi-allies. Therefore, the whole thing could yet backfire in that respect. It is not clear that it will immediately cause a cessation of Russian trade. Rather, it will further split the world.
Now let's move to, Ukraine's Zelensky, who's accusing Russia of withholding a promised list of terms he says are vital for peace talks. I'm sure you're also aware of the news that Ukraine has, done their part of sending some nuclear to Russia, killing some people at the air base there. But what do you make of Zelensky's claims about withholding a promised list of terms he says are vital for peace talks?
Well, it's kind of only a middling point because actually it's Monday that the key negotiation is supposed to take place. And Russia has said it will wait till Monday before presenting them. As such, this is by no means totally unreasonable because they're obviously working on these terms and don't want to rush them out. On the other hand, it is true that Russia is playing for time in some respect. And so as it is, the accusation, whilst it does have some merit, actually gets nowhere because Russia is in any case not going to be budged in one way or another to deliver its terms before it has to. And that will be Monday.
Right. We'll wait for Monday then. But then that leads me to Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, who's proposed that Turkey host a meeting between Vladimir Putin, Zelensky and Donald Trump. If that happens, it could determine a lot in the war in Ukraine, right?
Yes, but it simply isn't the Russian way of doing things, to be quite honest. The Russians have committees. They look carefully at treaties. They're quite used to having years, I underline the word, years to arrive at some sort of treaty, of which the Strategic Arms Limitations Treaty, known as SALT, are an example. Therefore, the likelihood that President Putin is going to turn up and sign away everything in a nice, cozy discussion is minimal. Moreover, please note, there's no indication President Putin wants to travel outside Russia. For a start, Stalin never did because of the security aspects. And in Putin's case, it's even more so because he's got a warrant against him. And therefore, there's no way he's going to easily turn up in Turkey. No way he's going to easily just hand over things there. And so this is just another, if you like, proposal, of which there have been so many for over 3 years now. I don't expect it to lead anywhere.
Now, let's move to the update with regards to, the Israel-Gaza situation. The update is that Hamas, as of yesterday, sent the proposal to release 10 free hostages. Now, do you consider that some sort of a bait to get Israel and the U.S. to consider a permanent ceasefire?
Well, yes, Hamas is obviously playing for a permanent ceasefire. Israel wants to continue the war. There's nothing new about that. The question is, at what point does someone say chicken and finally decides to agree? Because Hamas has kept on, despite all the constant missiling, with its demands, and Israel, despite all the criticism it gets, has carried on missiling. And therefore, there is no obvious immediate effect that these negotiations are going to have. However, what is promising? There are negotiations. They are taking place. There is a measure of agreement. I think something will be done. I don't believe it will be either as big or as long-lasting as Hamas was like. On the other hand, the fact negotiations are taking place is already a problem for Israel, because if it wants to destroy Hamas, it's got problems if it is talking to them. In effect, there's a contradiction in terms there.
Now, none of the proposal by Hamas is currently on the table, and Hamas's response constitutes neither an explicit rejection nor a clear acceptance of the proposal. This is what you're saying. Yes,
that's right. Hamas is talking on. In effect, it's trying to see whether it can squeeze some better terms out of the situation. I mean, that's its term. Israel, however, has gone for the other one. It's agreed completely with the American approach and thereby put itself in America's good books, which, of course, is a good thing to be if one can possibly manage this.
Now, do we consider this a stalemate? I mean, we've talked about the Gaza ceasefire for a long time now, and there's crisis there with regards aid and all of that. Do we consider this a stalemate? What do you think Trump's response or, Benjamin Netanyahu would be in the long run?
I don't expect Benjamin Netanyahu to accept any of Hamas's further demands. It hinges, therefore, on Donald Trump will do. If he were to accept any of Hamas's extra demands, then probably Israel would in fact be eventually coerced into doing so, assuming they were not overstrong. Now, is it a stalemate at present? Yes. Is the stalemate forever? No. They are talking. I envisage some sort of agreement being reached, hopefully this month. But it's not going to be tomorrow. But they are talking, and as far as I can see, Hamas is still talking, Israel's talking, and therefore something will be arranged, if only to give a temporary ceasefire for the Hamas, and if only to return some more hostages to Israel, because these are both pressing concerns for those countries.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz, for joining us on Arise America to talk about some of these very, very important issues.